What does learning AI really mean? I would strongly argue that the vast majority of business leaders right now saying that both students and workers need to learn AI don't really know what that means in practice. They just know it's important and that it's important for other people to see that they know it's important. And you see this across different sectors: business leaders, politicians, charities, education, healthcare. They all say that you need to learn AI, but very few of them, when asked, how does someone learn AI, would be able to give a coherent answer. So that's the problem I'm exploring today, and I'm going to propose a 3-step process for how the average ambitious person can use AI and become at least somewhat of an expert in the tools. And I'll be speaking about this from the position of someone whose area, marketing, growth, tech, startups, has been massively disrupted by AI. So I will focus, at least to some degree, on marketing and software development, because I do think those are the two biggest areas of the economy that have been upended and will continue to be upended by AI, and really explore how a person watching, such as myself, could learn about AI beyond just reading the tools and downloading a couple of apps. So without further ado, step one. Step one, use the new tools because most of them are free. It should go without saying that if you want to learn about AI, you have to use the tools that are coming out that leverage AI. The 3 biggest categories of tools that you could use would be: number 1, image and video generation; 2, vibe coding; 3, productivity hacks. When it comes to image and video generation, I would strongly advise going beyond the standard, typing a prompt into ChatGPT and seeing what it spits out. I would experiment with other platforms like Nano Banana Pro that aren't just focused on single image or video generation, but allow you to tweak the output as it comes out. This, I think, gives you a much stronger understanding of what the technology is actually able to do and the current limitations, and also over time, the areas that are getting better and better. Higgsfield AI is a personal favorite of mine because as you use the platform, you can pay a small subscription fee and it'll give you access to a number of different models or AIs that are out there so that you get a real strong understanding of what different models are good at and where progress is happening. For vibe coding, I would really encourage just coming up with a random website or app idea and trying to build it yourself. I personally would use the voice note function on Lovable, Base 44, Replit, and just really speak in a kind of rambling monologue into the platform about your idea, about what it could possibly do, as if you were having a conversation with a friend, and then get it to create something and see what it spits out. After 10-20 minutes of use, you'll get a pretty good understanding of what these platforms are able to do and where they struggle. Vibe coding also has the additional learning benefit of showing you the areas that these platforms are really good at intuitively understanding, for instance, website design, and the areas that they struggle a little bit more with, for instance, when you want to create a smooth user journey of how people would actually interact with the platform. And encountering those problems and figuring out yourself how, in tandem with the platform, to overcome those problems, again, gives you a really good understanding of how AI can be implemented. It's almost like you're having a debate with the platform, particularly if you use the voice note function. If you use the voice note function, you can really kind of describe, again, sometimes in a rambling sense, what you want the output to look like. And you begin to hone your ideas and hone the way that you ask for different outputs in a similar way that you might hone your own arguments. I personally really like Base 44. I find it the most intuitive platform. I also like the way that it explains back to you the different steps that it's taken and makes it very easy to publish something quite quickly. However, arguably Lovable, the more famous one, gives slightly nicer designs in terms of when it pops out. For instance, if you create a website, the website maybe looks a little bit nicer than it initially would on Base 44. Arguably. For productivity, I would actually have a conversation with ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude and really ask the platform about your area of expertise or your area of interest and what sort of productivity tools that use AI exist out there. This area is probably the category that I would spend the least time on because most tools here are just GPT wrappers, as in they basically just use ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or a similar model with a slightly nicer UI around it. And to be honest, if you've done a bit of vibe coding, you would be able to make these sort of wrappers yourself. I'll give a few of these examples in the description to this video, but a bonus kind of category that you could look into would be gaming. For instance, the Hunyuan 3D World Builder might blow your mind. It is a way that you can almost build your own sort of Minecraft world yourself and is worth a little play around, even for half an hour or so. Step 2, get philosophical with it. If someone wants to learn about AI, I would really encourage listening to long form podcasts or lectures or interviews with people who are in the space. So researchers, practitioners, founders, CEOs, and they will talk about the problems that they're encountering on a day-to-day basis. For instance, Jonathan Siddarth is founder and CEO of Turing, one of the fastest growing AI companies advancing frontier models. He has a conversation on 20VC where he not only talks about which frontier brands will perform best, but in my opinion, more interestingly, he talks about the challenges that all the different models will face, particularly when it comes to enterprise companies, so large multinational companies, implementing these tools in their workflows and processes. I'll share a link in the description as well. More philosophical still, you could listen to Palmer Luckey, founder of defense company, i.e. weapons company, Arundel. He's on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about the ethics of AI weaponry in warfare. And to be honest, he really goes beyond the straightforward yes or no questions about should AI be used in warfare and goes into a bit more specific ethical examples of when you would and might not want to use it. This is pretty hard-hitting stuff. It really comes down to personal ethics in terms of the conclusions, but I'm suggesting it here less from a moral positioning point of view, but more from a learning point of view in terms of what these systems and platforms and forms of intelligence are able to do. But to some degree, whilst interesting and super important, AI ethics is an endless hole where you can infinitely debate things and infinitely look into questions of whether or not something should or should not happen. If you want to learn AI, I think we have to go back to you practically using AI in your day-to-day. Which brings us to step 3. Use AI to solve a problem end to end in your own life, even if it solves that problem badly. This is essentially an extension of step 2 and step 3. And it's also the first step in theory that could lead you to create an AI product that could be monetized. Now, I'm not talking about monetization in this video. I'm really focused on the learning process. So think of a problem in your life, ideally in your career or area of expertise. This could be a lead generation problem, a gaming problem, a social networking problem, a habit forming problem, a super specific technical problem with a Chrome browser extension that is like kind of useful but not quite what you want. Or it could be a sort of creative problem, something that you create on a regular basis or would like to create on a regular basis and think there could potentially be a way to speed it up. You're essentially thinking of a problem that AI could solve start to finish with as minimal input from yourself in an ideal world, because naturally this is a learning process rather than necessarily trying to create the perfect product. So let's say you think of an app that helps you and your housemates decide what film to watch that night. You've now got to create that app and overcome all the messy problems that occur in that process. And naturally, you're vibe coding this. But through the vibe coding process, you'll have to figure out what else do you want in this app? How do you want the decision making to occur? How do you want people to use it? Does it bring third-party sources in there like Netflix, Letterboxd, etc.? You have to figure out how to make it user-friendly so that people would actually like to use it. And then you go a step beyond the vibe coding process and look, how do I actually publish this? What is the process of getting an AI product out into the world, either a website or an app on the App Store. You're also then sort of going on an entrepreneurial journey because you're thinking about, how do I then want to advertise this? It's all well and good to have an AI product, but actually, how do people find out about AI products? And a million other problems would occur in your design and prototyping process before you even get it out to other people to use. And again, this is important because it helps you understand what really are the limitations of AI and what is it really, really good at. This is going beyond the fun experiments you would do in step one and really trying to create a finished product. A finished product, but not a perfect product. Why this is so useful comes back to the start of our video. If you're ever in an interview situation and someone asks you about AI, if you can bring up a very specific example of something that you've created, solved the problem end to end, and talk about the journey and steps and problems that you overcame, you will set yourself apart from the rest of the competition, at least in the short to medium term. In the long term, this will become table stakes. Everyone will be expected to do this. But more importantly, this is an infinitely achievable thing to do in a single weekend. I've also got a bonus step, which is do not buy an AI course unless it's about the really deep technical fundamentals of AI. There are a few reasons for this. The first being possibly the most ironic. By the time you've finished a course in AI, it'll be out of date. There'll be new tools. The tools that exist will be better at things that they weren't, or there'll be problems that have emerged that didn't exist before. So it's interesting to do a course, but again, doesn't keep you up to date, doesn't really help you learn AI. But even more importantly, the vast majority of interesting information about AI is completely free. Even some of the platforms that I've mentioned, although you can subscribe to them for essentially faster use, there is most of the time a free version that you can use. And if you're the kind of person who just really wants something spoon-fed to you, which is totally valid, it's actually probably better to go to ChatGPT, open up the voice note, and say that you want ChatGPT to design you a course on AI. Tell them about your areas of interest or places that you would like to grow and progress in, etc. And it will give you something personalized, which is much better than buying something online. Like I said, the only exception to this would be if you want something super technical, if you really want to understand the fundamentals of deep learning, machine learning, LMMs, etc. This would be if, for whatever reason, you are looking to go down the career path of being an AI researcher, which again is totally valid, but it's also unlikely that someone going down that path is watching this video now. And also, it's possible that AI researchers and coders might be the first jobs to be automated once AI reaches some degree of escape velocity. I'm not talking about artificial general intelligence, but simply the ability for AI programs to develop themselves faster than humans would. So those are my top 3 steps for someone who wants to learn AI. If I was someone who wanted my kids, my students, my employees to learn AI, these are the 3 basic steps that I reckon they should do. It is the only way to stay on top of this ever-growing iceberg. And if you're lucky and a little bit persistent, you could strike gold on an amazing AI idea that maybe you could monetize in the future.